I had the pleasure of playing in a mega game at UKGE this year, alongside some wonderful friends and YouTubers, including Daddy from MysticArts. I'm going to say including, and then I'm going to list everyone. Oh well. Tom from the Grungian Master, it's Grungian, but it's about grungs. Don't worry about it. Gabriel from The Ugly Goblin, and Trek from Trekaros. That's how that works. I've never played in one of these games before, and the concept of playing with 30 people in a single game is one that, I'm not going to lie, fully horrified me, as I have more than a spattering of ADHD, and focusing on that many people and that many things just sounded like a lot. However, it was an absolute blast, and I had an incredibly good time, despite the fact I ended up split off from the rest of the group, and somehow in charge of a small country in the middle of a crisis. I also learned a few things from it, and I wanted to share some of the things that I have learned. I recently did a poll and revealed that half of my audience, or at least half of the people that responded to the poll, are DMs, not players. Well, 50% of players as well. That's how percentages work. Mostly, it's more split than I thought it was, which means I can do silly little things like this. And while I do think the internet is flooded with DM advice, I think sometimes I have stuff to say. You know, every so often. So today I'm going to break down the way that the mega game worked, talk a little bit about it, and some of the things I learned from it, and some of the things I think you can probably apply to your games, because I will certainly be doing the same with mine. Before we get into any of that, I do think it's probably worth talking about what a mega game is. This one was called the Black Swan Crisis. The concept was that it was a geopolitical worldwide game in which each person played a figurehead of sorts from a different country or different international bureau, and they had their own goals on the back of a little lanyard that they had, which is a fun way of doing things. Kind of win conditions, but there were no winners or losers as such. I definitely won though, don't get me wrong. The core concepts here were that it felt a bit like a mix between a TTRPG and a board game, in that we were all role-playing as to what we should do and making deals and stuff, but the rules were a lot simpler than a standard TTRPG, which allowed for more complications as the game went on. And I think this is the thing that I really took away from this, is that you can always add more stuff to your games, even if it doesn't always make sense to do so. But you do have to be careful with it. I would love to shout out who ran this game, but the website just says that it was a mega game. So thank you so much to the people who ran it. It was absolutely incredible. I had a blast, as did all of my friends. Initially, my aim was to keep the country I was in charge of from falling into a worse crisis. This meant applying my action and the resources I had to try to get other people's resources and help basically reinstate the infrastructure to stop the flooding, eliminate gangs, which were problematic because they were attacking people. And also, despite the fact I was empowered to begin with, I wanted to try and even that power out a bit, because I am a firm believer in, you know, unity through actual unity instead of through the rich people doing what they want. Shocking. Each action that you took would affect something in some way. So let's say I wanted to boost the economy of a different area of the country I was in. I could do that by using my action to do it alongside some materials, and it would have an impact, which was decided by a die roll. White was okay, it goes okay. Red was it goes poorly. Naturally, as somebody with awful dice luck, I kept hitting that. And yellow was that it went really well. I got that once. I'm so cursed. I think the simplicity there is incredibly cool, and I do think that this is something you could definitely apply to your games, because you can have geopolitical things where you are schmoozing and talking the talk and walking the walk with various figureheads and political people, without making it so far removed from the game that it doesn't feel like D&D anymore. I know that MysticArts is a huge fan of geopolitical things, as you can see in the zine that they put out. The broadsheet is what it's called. You also get some really cool player options, which I've done videos on before, so you should check those out if you're interested. It helps that both Darthi and are genuinely lovely, and Darthi is quite tall, dare he. Anyway, you can have more complicated rules for these if you want to, but you don't need to. You can just have it be, this is a thing that is happening. There is no failure state. A low roll didn't mean it failed, it just meant it didn't go as well as it could have. And I actually quite like that as well, because if you're applying resources to an area, or you're trying to repair something, I actually think a bad roll doesn't always have to be failure. Sometimes it can just be it's not as efficient as you want. While failure is an important part of TTRPGs, and I'm in no way arguing in favour of getting rid of it, there are some things in which the players shouldn't fail because they're simply too good at it. And I think that's a cool way of doing it. It's a scale of how much you succeed rather than whether or not you do succeed. So I guess that's takeaway one alongside the geopolitical stuff. which means it's takeaway 2. We're doing very well at this. Over the 5 turns, yep, that's right, it was half-hour turns, so it still took 2.5 hours to get through the game. It became very clear that it wasn't just a crisis, well, several crises, that we were trying to avoid. There were some strange things happening, including a robed gentleman who was wandering around the globe, causing madness to any who looked upon him, along with blotting out the sun as he went. It's a classic eldritch play. Turned out that the head cultist, actually, that particular dude, was in fact one of the people on my own country, one of the other players, in fact, which we caught onto very quickly, and I do feel a bit bad about that, but still couldn't stop him properly, because people's actions are people's actions. You can't fully stop them, which was an interesting way to do things. As more and more of this eldritch stuff started happening, it became clear that the focus of the game would need to shift. We'd sorted out the economy, which was lovely. We'd made the people happy. That was also good. Everything was going pretty well. Unfortunately, these big old eldritch symbols had started to appear, and these are probably bad. So we needed to do something about those. It was a very quick shift and made for a very interesting change of pace, even with so few turns. And the lesson here, I think, for me and for you, if you're looking to learn a lesson, is that you can add in new elements at basically any time. They can make sense after the fact or during the fact, but ultimately you are free to add in new things as and when you see fit, both as a player and as a DM. And in D&D, that could mean whole new creatures, because, you know, magic exists, and more political interests are always constantly happening in D&D because you've got so many factions involved. But it could also be new rule sets, right? While the rules of this game didn't change, it wouldn't be that hard to, let's say, for example, decide that magic items have all gone on the fritz, meaning that any magic items that there currently are no longer work, and you have to do something about this. It means that people have to learn to craft them, and that's a fantastic way to introduce the Heliana's Guide to Monster Hunting crafting rules if that's something you want to do. You can also start drip feeding in things like transformations from Grim Hollow, which are a fantastic way to really mess with player characters, as long as they are happy to do so, obviously. But it is a game at the end of the day, and even if it slightly tweaks your verisimilitude, I don't think it should stop you adding in things that you think will be fun for both yourself and for your players. As it turned out with the twist here, though, the Eldritch cult that were trying to bring back their dead god was not the only people we had to be concerned about. We had to be concerned about evil wizards, because while it seemed as though they were fixing the Eldritch symbols by turning them green from red, which is a colour we all innately, generally, associate with it being safer than red, which is obviously the color of danger for a variety of reasons. Blood, for starters. Toxic creatures obviously often have bright colors, so, you know, it's built in. It turned out at the end of the game, we found that they were in fact not trying to do this out of the goodness of their hearts, but because they were trying to ascend to immortality. We didn't find that out fully, though, until after the game had finished and everything was being resolved. And I think that leads me to my next point quite nicely, which is that it is okay if your players do not know everything in the game. It's okay if they miss things. It's okay if they don't completely understand different factions or the motives that they have, or even completely don't see things which are happening off in the background. It is, however, essential that other stuff is happening if you want to have a living, breathing world. And I do think that is really important. A classic example from the way I run my games, and it is becoming a bit of a running theme, is that certain areas do end up getting attacked while the players are away doing other things. The world is a dangerous one in D&D for the most part, and if you want to really show that off and you want to make sure the world feels alive, even without the players, you know, haunting it or hanging around specific areas, you need to make sure things happen when they're not there. And having destruction occur while it is off screen, I think is a really, really good way to do that. But sometimes the players aren't going to see that for a long time. The thing that they were protecting might have been destroyed a long time ago, and they don't discover it until they decide to go back to the village or back to whoever it was that they were trying to safeguard. It's not good to do this constantly, obviously, because then it takes away the players' agency a bit, but it is worth noting that just because the players are doing something else doesn't mean everything else is stopped for them. It's not really how D&D works. It's not really how any game should work, and certainly not how the living world works. So if you are going for a more immersive experience, it's worth keeping that in mind. It's also worth noting that a post-game debrief about the things that have happened and why they've happened, granted usually after a campaign rather than each session, is something that might be worth doing if you want to wrap up how and why certain things occurred. I think players like a little glimpse behind the curtain at the end of the day, and getting the specifics as to why some things happened can be quite satisfying. But I think that's it for this, the first video I'm doing about D&D tips sort of thing. Man, I keep changing the stuff I'm doing on this channel constantly. You will have to bear with me. But I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please like and subscribe. Please make sure you go and check out all of the incredible D&D YouTubers that there are out there. I will link to the people I played with, because they're all wonderful friends and just generally good people, although they also all have more subscribers than me, so you'll probably subscribe to them anyway. But yes, closing thoughts. It's never too late to change whatever it is that you're doing. Never feel bad about introducing new content that you've bought. I did the same with Dr. Drollin's Dictionary of Dinosaurs. I'm running a campaign of Chult. The moment that book came out, you can bet there was a sudden surge of magical dinosaurs all over the place, and I'm having a lot more fun because of it, and so are my players, because the dinosaur stat blocks in D&D Standard are a little bit lacking in that respect. But that is it. Have fun, keep playing games. I'll see you when I next see you, which will be for a build video on Monday. That's a good one this time. All melee all the time. Yeah, but that's it. Oh, I should do a thing, an outro. You can watch other videos that I have done also. I'm gonna get the hang of this D&D YouTube thing at some point, I swear. But what should we link to? Let's do the Dr. Drollins one. That's a good one. And let's also do another review. Grim Hollow, maybe? I like Grim Hollow. We could do a different one. I did Grim Hollow last week. Hellianas rules. Dr. Drollins, Hellianas. Nailed it. Right. Goodbye.